Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Rob's Hot Mic. I'm your host, Rob, and this is my home for movie news, views, and reviews. Tonight, we're going to be doing a bit of a twofer review thing here. We're going to compare Amazon Originals Jolt to the big box office splurge from MGM, soon to be in Amazon, so I guess they're both potentially Amazon originals. Snake Eyes, starring Henry Golding. But before we're going to do that, we do have a bit of news and might slip into a bit of a hot take view, so to speak. I want to start off with this story. Apparently this morning, Scarlett Johansson filed suit against Disney and Disney Plus and, Marvel. I'm sure everyone in any way involved with Black Widow was named. Her big beef is that most of her compensation is based on the theatrical release back end. And as we understood when it first came out, it did pretty well, $80 million. I kind of highlighted it in my story, Cinema, the cinema sky is not falling. I'll put a link somewhere to that. But it also did $60 million in same-day release on Disney Plus. One presumes that she gets none of that action, or much less than she would have done theatrically. And so that's kind of the heart of the suit, is that Disney is screwing her out of some of her compensation, or maybe not just some, but a lot of her compensation. A lot of these big name, star-driven, or at least star-hooked vehicles, star-led vehicles, maybe that'd be a better way to put it. The compensation is primarily based in the back end, in what the gate, the box office results, and a lot of big bonuses. And it even highlights some of that in this piece. I will link in the description and in the pinned comment this piece from IndieWire. There's another one from the Hollywood Reporter. Of course, it's in Variety. I'll put as many links as I can find. It digs into the story a little deeper. As far as hot take goes, everyone, yeah, I gotta admit, I'm with ScarJo here. It's always tough, being on the side of a millionaire, even if they're up against billionaires, or she's a multimillionaire, 100-millionaire, whatever she is. But they're screwing a worker on her deal. Again, if she loses, I won't be like, oh, how will she make rent? That's not a problem here. But I do think the principle still applies. What is, I think, kind of fascinating on what's going on here, everybody, is that, and this is a little weird, sorry, folks, I've got there we are. What's weird here is, or maybe not weird, noteworthy, is the last time Hollywood went through a really big shift on how stars were dealt with, I think was when Katharine Hepburn basically almost single-handedly broke the studio contract system. It was still alive up into the 60s, but fundamentally different, especially for these big stars. And I find it noteworthy that here's another lawsuit from another woman who's getting jerked around by the studio system going, enough's enough. And it may actually change the way these big name stars, these above the line stars, are compensated. How that will happen, who knows? Probably something where the streamers are going to have to come up with what they're calling maybe an artificial back end. It's something I think worthy of watching. And as far as the hot take, and I know she's a multimillionaire, but yeah, I would be on her side here in this, what is truly a labor management conflict. Just getting, they skirted around. They're trying to work around on how she's supposed to get paid. And that's Bullshit. All right. There's my hot take. I got no hot take Henry here for us, but maybe I'll throw it. What the hell? Let's, oh, never mind. I'm not even going to bother with the audio effect. All right. With that out of the way, let's get to our regularly scheduled programming. Let's take a look at each movie, and then I'll kind of compare the two and tell you why I think one is worth more than the other, or is worth your time more than the other one is. First of all, let's talk about Jolt, Amazon original movie. Let's see here. According to IMDb, here's the here's the log line. This is quite entertaining. A bouncer with a slightly murderous anger management problem that she controls with the help of an electrode-lined vest she uses to shock herself back to normalcy whenever she gets homicidal. Anyway, after the first guy she's ever fallen for is murdered, she goes on a revenge-fueled rampage to find the killer while the cops pursue her as their chief suspect. Of course, it is directed by Tanya Wexler, probably the biggest hysteria in 2011, maybe the biggest one you know. Writer Scott Washa, and I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Of course, it stars Kate Beckinsale. You got Jai Courtney or High Courtney, Stanley Tucci, Bobby Cannavale, and Laverne Cox. Those are the main players. It, as far as its, let's take a look at its social nutrition checklist. All right, reframe stamp. I actually think it's going to get one, so I'm giving that a big check mark. What's it union made? I'm not 100% sure, folks, because it was shot in England and Bulgaria, but I'm going to start kind of tilting towards the yes on anything shot in the EU. It's got stronger unions and stronger union protection in the European Union than it does have in North America. So even though they may not be big on the logo thing, I'm going to assume that's a yes. As far as the Bechdel test goes, oh yeah, solid yes on this one. And in some of the most entertaining ways. So well worth, yeah, it wins on that one. Now, is it class conscious? Is it going to get 3 yeses in a row? No, it will not. Not that kind of movie. And get into the more of the meaning. Might want to take a look at that. But in the end, as far as the social nutrition checklist goes, not bad. Scores 75%. Pretty solid. Now, getting into Snake Eyes, let's see. Another lazy AF log line. Another lazy AF log line from IMDb on this one. A G.I. Joe spin-off centered around the character of Snake Eyes. Well, that's accurate. The film is called Snake Eyes, a G.I. Joe origin. G.I. Joe origin. So they're obviously assuming, based on the success or failure of this film, they're going to, stream out a bunch of origin stories for the whole G.I. Joe universe. This one is the backstory to Snake Eyes, the character. If you've ever played with the toys or seen any of the comics or the first couple of films, Snake Eyes is always behind a mask. Sometimes we see the guy's eyes. He never speaks. And it's based on this backstory with Storm Shadow, dressed the same way as some kind of ninja. I believe he doesn't speak either, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But there's some conflict in their backstory, and he has sworn not to speak until he avenges or makes right, or I don't know, some BS. This one is a version of that backstory. He sort of teaches himself to become a ninja or some nonsense, and then he kind of gets involved in this underground society in Japan and a whole bunch of nonsense. And, there you go. On its social, who was in it? Sorry, folks. Okay, it does star Henry Golding as Snake Eyes. The other supporting players, Andrew Koji, Haruka Abe, Takahiro Hira, and let me make sure I get her, Eri Shida as kind of the matriarch of this kind of thing. There are a few other. Samara Weaving is in it briefly as Scarlet from the Joe universe, and then Ursula Corbero is Baroness, sort of one of the villains of this piece. And that's kind of what we got going on there. It was directed by, my bad, folks, directed by Robert Schwenke. It was written by Evan Spiliotopoulos, Joe Shrapnel, and Anna Waterhouse. Now, as far as its social nutrition checklist, would it get a reframe stamp? No, it would not. Is it union made? Yes, it is. What about the Bechdel test? Yeah. I've given it the benefit of the doubt. A little bit of a slippery one there, but sure. And last but certainly not least, is it class conscious? It's another one that is not. Anyway, so that comes to a final score of 50%, batting 500. Not bad. Kind of what I suspect, as Jim and I have been reporting these things, is probably average. 75% is pretty rare. 25% or even zero is rare, or is pretty rare. 100%, I don't think we've had one yet. Anyway, so with that out of the way, let's talk about Snake Eyes first. As far as the craft goes, it's the kind of movie one would expect. Let me look up the budget here. Estimated budget between 90 and 110 million, and it's got all the craft that shows. It's all better than adequately acted. They're all professionals. It has a good look. The stunts are pretty solid. It's all solid. It's solid craft work. The story is where I think it falls down. And really on two key elements. One is the setting up the main character, Snake Eyes. At the very beginning, you certainly see how he could be motivated. There's this whole backstory scene with him as a small child. He sees his father murdered and the man who killed him. Jump to present day, though, and all he's doing is fighting in some weird underground MMA fight club thing. No idea how he picked up his skills. There's some BS voiceover, but you really don't know how he picked up his skills. You don't know why he's there, how he ended up there, any of it. Just some nonsense about how he was raised by the mean streets to be a ninja, apparently. And this is part of what really... And then, of course, a guy comes up and says, hey, I know what motivates you. Vengeance. Sure. And I can give you what you want. You help me with my underworld things, because apparently Snake Eyes has a bit of a, moral compunction against working for gangsters. But he's saying, listen, you work for me for a bit. I'll make sure you get the guy. As a matter of fact, I will deliver you the guy who killed your dad. And there goes, and that kind of kicks off the story. You know what? That is not enough. You do not see, like, I never bought his motivation because I never saw him up to the point where the gangster comes and promises him this thing. It would have been a lot better if there was a couple more scenes of him growing up, picking up his skills, and being driven by that vengeance. Then a lot of the rest of the movie would work for me, but it's a weak motivation because we don't see it. And so it's just kind of magical that this guy says, I know what's motivating you. And now the audience knows what's motivating you. And now we can start. Another thing I think is what brings this movie down is it takes itself very seriously. And it's kind of a dark movie. It takes itself seriously. And you know what? There's no sense of humor, none whatsoever. No. And it's like, I think one of the reasons MCU is successful, and it's not like they're breaking any great storytelling ground, but they kind of get that there's got to be a little levity. You know what? We're dealing with big issues, but a little bathos sprinkled in makes the darkness go down better. But last and certainly not least, like even that, you could still, well, it's a darker, edgier worldview, sure. But here's the other thing it misses is it doesn't have what I would call, it's not grounded. There's no stakes. And what I mean by that, there's no stakes to you and I. You know, you get his interest, but when you're dealing with these, and it's all the world destruction nonsense, but we don't really see it. We don't understand how this would relate to our lives. So you got a character you're not buying. You got a world that's a little ridiculous and taking itself really seriously because it's all this. You got an underworld bad guys versus underworld good guys, but it doesn't seem to be connected to the world you and I live in any way. You don't feel the consequences. Hey, if the good guys don't win, we're all screwed, you know? So that is one of those, I think that's a thing that's missing. And this is last but certainly not least, I am going to call out the costume design. I know this is a bit of a craft, but it's also storytelling. The Baroness wears these ridiculous stiletto heels with like the big chunky toe. And it's like, a stiff wind could blow this woman over. And that really takes away from how frightening she is. You know, she's not in a kinky dungeon. So you're not like kind of going, oh, spicy and she's frightening in a carousing way. It's like, no. And it looks ridiculous. And I'm just sick of seeing women in combat roles, or they're supposed to be big and tough and threatening, or even just tough and threatening, not big, not necessarily big. I'm sick of seeing them in heels, especially ridiculous heels where they're not going to run. They can't, they're going to trip the second they got to get moving. It's like, just skip it. These things, it's like they're foot-bound and in Imperial China, So yeah, I really think there's got to be some sort of hashtag. Quit putting these heroes and villains in heels, So yeah, that kind of wraps up my feeling on Snake Eyes, and we're going to talk about more of the politics of the film. I'll save that to later. Now, as far as Jolt goes, this is a little different. Now, craft nowhere near as strong as Snake Eyes, but you can tell this is a movie. Let's see what its budget is estimated at. Ooh, no estimate. That makes sense. I would say it's probably somewhere between 20 and 30 million. Kate Beckinsale is definitely not pulling down, Charlize Theron's kind of dough. Stanley Tucci was going to get paid. So yeah, I think it would probably looking at a $30 million budget. If you can see it was shot in a back lot, and I think that is, yeah, you see it was shot in a back lot that's supposed to look like a New York City. Uh, it's not got a big fancy soundtrack. Its fight scenes are nowhere near the wire work. Uh, it's just not, it doesn't blow up anything or hardly anything. Uh, yeah, you're just not dealing with as big a movie, but it's not trying to be. It's trying to be a solid streamer. Everything about it says this was meant for a streaming service. As far as the acting goes, I think here, compared to Snake Eyes, I think this was really well calibrated. The Snake Eyes doesn't allow the actors to do a lot, especially because it doesn't have a sense of humor and it's not grounded in our world. Like there's no connection to it. Whereas here, it benefits from that, and so you get performances that are a little more lively and a little more interesting, and you can tell the actors are having a good time and they're loose in their nonsense. So yeah, so there you go. I think that's it loses against Snake Eyes in the bigness of it all, but it kind of gains in other areas. So let's say they're both about the same as far as craft goes, even though meant for different venues. What about the story? Now, you got to, much like Snake Eyes, the premise is ridiculous. And it kind of stays ridiculous throughout the entire film, especially, its visual effects at times are kind of weak and everything. And it's just kind of nonsense. But it does have a sense of humor. There's a couple of set pieces in here that would violate any kind of harm to baby test, but work. It's just, or putting babies at risk, but it works. It's funny. The other thing I think that makes this story work is there are, as ridiculous as the main character is, as ridiculous, this is another underworld part of life that doesn't touch us, but there is enough real world in it. It's still about a woman who's went on a few nice dates, sleeps with this guy, is feeling a real connection, and then gets jerked around. And of course, it's in this violent underworld world where she's got an anger management problem and she's like a super trained badass bouncer, security expert, whatever. But there's still that kind of, she will make jokes and you'll buy it. You'll be, oh yeah, that's dating in one's 40s, So it all works. Even the emotional manipulation, it does. It has an emotional heart to it. Am I going to say this is a great film? No, but it has enough going on, like real world consequences, a real world, like a reality we could kind of buy, or at least parts of it are human and real, and a sense of humor about itself. Again, the characters never wink at the camera, but they definitely, these players obviously know the kind of movie they're in and they commit to it, but they're having fun. They're loose. It's really quite entertaining. So I think from that, I still got to give you which one is more worth your time. I'd say Jolt is worth your time. It's a streamer. It's kind of ridiculous. If you're not into the action thing or the crime action movie or the revenge plot, which both really are revenge crime underworld movies, neither are going to float your boat. If you have a hard time suspending disbelief unless the film is in a perfectly realistic setting and perfectly executed, okay, well, neither of these are going to be for you anyway. So if you like those things, this is the better movie. And because it's on Prime, you're not spending any extra money. Like, I mean, okay, I went to the budget theater, but Snake Eyes cost me dough. It was the first time I went back to the theater since the lockdown, because I'm here in Manitoba and they only opened them up a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it was like, well, this is disappointing. I wish I didn't. Damn it, why wasn't there something better? Yeah, Green Knight's coming up tomorrow. Okay, so yeah, I think Jolt is the movie that is definitely worth your time. And yeah, I heartily recommend it. Now, as far as the meaning goes here, they're still crime movies. So there's kind of one's a superhero movie, one's kind of a super person movie, a competent person movie, even though she's got a health issue that allows her to be kind of like a superhero. I think if you were to put them, or again, we're putting them side by side, there is kind of an MCU sort of moralizing in Snake Eyes that you don't necessarily see in Jolt. The cops are presented that are chasing after her are still presented pretty positively, but perhaps a little more realistically. I don't know. Like, I mean, here though, we're talking about a difference of inches. Yeah, neither are blazing any real ideological ground here. What I will say is two things. One, much like Gunpowder Milkshake, you know, they spent enough time on the backstory. So I bought her. And I think that's a great thing, is investing enough time in a character's backstory, especially when they're doing things that are just unrealistic in real life. I think that's great, especially for, quote, women badass characters, that they invest that time in setting it up. That kind of shuts up the incel ding-dong crowd that goes, well, no woman can do that. You know what? They invest that time to set up the character. Versus putting the Baroness in ridiculous heels. Again, we got to stop that. We need a hashtag for that. Looks like there's somebody in my chat. I want to know. What else? I think that's about it. You know what? They're they are what they are. Oh, there was one other thing, and I just can't. Damn it. Where are my notes? You know what? I'm kind of hooped on this one. I can't remember. Oh, we do have to give Snake Eyes one thing. And it's small. It is a ninja character based on the Hasbro G.I. Joy toy set and TV cartoon and comic books. So take this with a grain of salt. But at least this time it's an Asian lead. Henry Golden is Asian. And it's set in Japan except for Samara Weaving and the Baroness, who don't take over the show. They're not, they're not savior or, they're not taking over the show. It's all Asian players. So here's one iota of respect for that. I think that's about it, folks. If you liked what you saw, please smash the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. If there's anyone who wants to hang out after the chat, I will stick around for a bit after the credits, which I'm going to roll. Bear with me. I'm going to roll those now.